Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Mark Plaster, Senior Executive Editor of Emergency Physicians Monthly, and you're listening to EP Talk, the place where ER docs come to talk about things that are relevant to our professional as well as personal lives. And nothing is more relevant right now than the coronavirus. We are all impacted by this. And my guest today is Dr. John Martin from Butterfly Network, who has an interesting perspective on this. We'll get to the meat of it in a minute, but I want to tell you a little bit about John. I've known him for several years. John's a board certified general surgeon, vascular surgeon, and intensivist who went on to work for MedStar and then joined the Butterfly Network, a really novel product in ultrasound. If you don't know what the Butterfly Ultrasound is, you've been under a rock someplace. I want to let John have an opportunity to talk about the application of ultrasound to the COVID virus epidemic, which actually is, I don't know about you, but the thought of using ultrasound in an infectious disease is truly novel. So welcome to the program, John. And let's start by talking about, first off, everybody seems to be so concerned right now. You and I were talking about this before we went on the program about getting tested, who's positive, who's negative. But the truth is, not even if you're positive, 99% of the time, nothing's going to happen. You go home and you're isolated, right?
Yeah, the vast majority of people, and thanks for having me on, Mark. It's a really important topic right now, and there's a lot of discussion about a lot of things in the public media, but what's really important for physicians is how are we going to actually manage this massive influx of patients to our hospital. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. So as we think about this, if you're sick right now, obviously the last place you should be is around other people. You need to stay at home. But if you're
Yeah.
sick enough, you believe that you have to go to the hospital. Once you're tested, the next big question for you is it okay for me to go home or should I be in the hospital for a higher level of care?
Right.
And as if you look back through the history of this, and we saw the early stuff out of China, a lot of people were talking about CT scans. And it was certainly shown that CT is very specific with some very unique findings with this COVID virus on CT. But what they learned very quickly in practical sense was we don't have the capacity to CT everybody, and you certainly don't want to ship everybody through the hospital to the CT scanner, and you don't want to do terminal cleaning with CT. So we needed a different option.
Yeah.
As a result, what they found and discovered in China, and have learned quickly in Italy, is that point of care ultrasound, having an ultrasound device and ultrasound the lung, is really a perfect solution to this problem. Now, as you know, as the emergency physician and emergency doctors and critical care doctors have known for a long time, lung ultrasound is actually really good. It's actually good for detecting pneumonia. Unfortunately, for many, it's not had widespread adoption yet. But in the middle of this crisis, we really have a rebirth or an awakening of understanding of just how important lung ultrasound and how helpful it can be.
Yeah. And particularly interesting about Butterfly is because it's a handheld. Tell us a little bit more about Butterfly, because our experience oftentimes in the emergency department with ultrasound is what we do with our units that are in the emergency department, but also sending them out of the department. And the beauty of the Butterfly is its handheld and portable application. And tell us about that.
Yeah, it's really a unique time for Butterfly. Its value proposition compared to all other systems is now become glaring and full focus around the world. So all other ultrasound systems, as you know, use piezoelectric crystals. You need multiple probes to scan different parts of the body, and frequently associated with a cart that we roll in and out of rooms.
Right.
Well, rolling a cart in and out of rooms in the isolation environment that we're in right now, that is not exactly a practical solution.
No.
Nobody, it's hard enough as it is, but cleaning that device, and certainly we can put sheaths over our device because it's a single probe that allows you to scan the entire body from 1 to 10 megahertz, linear phased and curved array. And you put the probe in the phone, which you connect it to, in a sterile sheath, and you're off to the races.
Yep.
Obviously, dramatically better in this situation than a cart-based system. So Butterfly is uniquely situated as the only ultrasound system on a chip to actually provide this solution. The other really interesting thing that emergency room physicians are facing all across the world is that we're setting up these outside the emergency room environments, tents in our parking lots and in malls and in different locations,
Right.
respiratory centers, if you will. And there's no X-ray machines or carts or CT scans in those locations, but there sure can be butterfly ultrasound devices.
Right. So you can actually, I mean, one of the things in a worst case scenario, okay, God forbid it gets to this. We're hoping and praying that we're going to, through social distancing, we're going to actually be able to kind of what they say, flatten the curve so that we don't see this giant spike and overwhelm our ability to see people in the emergency department or in the hospital. But it is definitely a potential reality. And if that happens, your point here is that we need to keep those people out of the hospital in their testing phase. Only put the people into the hospital who absolutely must be there. And so when the military talks about putting up field hospitals or things like that, one of the things that could apply here is you could determine whether they need the next level of care through pulse oximetry, certainly, but also through handheld ultrasound. So what an amazing application.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've learned a lot of really important lessons from the Chinese and now from the Italians. And as you well know, the Italians are kind of the experts at lung ultrasound. There's a lot of the best literature actually comes from them, and I guess we're fortunate that right now that we have their expertise to lean on. But we're in daily communication now with people involved in this all around the world through our company and through our device, and some important learning lessons that has to be shared, and that is we think often we'll use our clinical judgment. Well, what they found is lung findings may often precede the hypoxemia and tachycardia that you see and dyspnea that people get into trouble. And so really their protocols are if you come in and you're sick and they test positive, then they scan the lungs and use that as a guide of who needs to be admitted and who doesn't. And those people that have very mild early findings, maybe a little bit of pleural thickening, if you will, or very minimal B lines, and who don't have significant comorbidities, they can go home. But those that have significant findings, even if they're not hypoxemic, those people get admitted because ultimately they've been shown to get into trouble.
Interesting, fascinating. So So let's just talk about the logistics. Okay, tell me a little bit about the market penetration of Butterfly. How many people have Butterfly? If 1,000 hospitals said they needed to have Butterfly, or a field hospital said they need to have Butterfly, let's just talk a little business here. Can you fulfill that? I mean, that's how many machines are out there ready to roll?
Yeah, so we've been very lucky with the adoption of our device in our first year of sales. We oversold over tens of thousands of these devices available in the United States and 19 different countries around the world. But like any other medical product at the moment, certainly if this gets really crazy, we may have a problem. But right now we have the capacity to ship devices around the country. Let's pause for a second. Let me call the guys down for a second. I'm sure everyone in the country can appreciate this dilemma at the moment. And,
Yeah.
It's interesting. The dogs don't know that there's a crisis going on, but they certainly know we're home. And they're trying to adapt to all of us being around. They're not quite sure. Should I be playing? Should I be quiet? Their routines are being disrupted as well.
Absolutely. I think everybody by now has seen the video of the guy, and I think he's in Hong Kong, and he's talking to an interview on the world markets, and his toddlers come walking in, and then his wife comes running in, and she's crawling around trying to drag the kids out. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I do remember that, and it's quite entertaining. And I think we can all appreciate the situation that we're in right now. And it's funny, we saw a great cartoon we circulated right around the company because we actually make Butterfly for pets. There's a Butterfly IQ for pets.
Oh,
But
that's funny.
but there's a cute little saying that the pet comes up, and what he's thinking is, my owner's home a lot now, and he seems to get on these conferences a lot. Everybody in the conference is really excited when my face gets in the picture. I'm the one that's keeping everybody happy and together.
That's exactly right. Well, where do we go
Well,
to here?
back to the subject of Butterfly, I think it's a unique time when this device is really critically helpful. And one other thing that I've learned, Mark, from around the country is not everybody's actually familiar with just how important this role is. And so your message is here to physicians who aren't familiar with lung ultrasound and whether they're emergency room physicians who haven't used it a lot, or whether it's primary care doctors that are now facing these patients, it's really important that they get up to speed quickly with learning how to do lung ultrasound and using this to actually make a determination to risk stratify their patients and guide disposition.
How do they do that? I mean, okay, let's say that I contact Butterfly, I get the machine, and now how do I learn how to do the lung ultrasound?
Yeah, so we've put videos right into the app itself, and we're also have training videos on our website. We're also actually hosting a webinar tomorrow with some experts from around the world to talk about this very subject as well.
Okay, so going back, John, tell me a little bit about how I would learn how to use lung ultrasound. I've done ultrasounds of other things, but I'm not so sure I feel very confident about applying this to pulmonary tissue.
Yeah, I think, Mark, it's a great question because it's one that's facing physicians all around the country and all around the globe that don't know how to do this. One certain application that we have is we built into the app itself very short video clips. They're edited by Mike Stone, a noted emergency room physician and educator that actually walks through very simple process of how to do a lung ultrasound. There are also a number of videos on the internet that walk through this as well. And so I think people can see these videos and they'll learn very quickly how to perform this test. Interestingly enough, we have a research project going on right now before all this happened with lung ultrasound for B lines for congestive heart failure. In this research protocol, we are having patients learn to scan themselves with the device. We show an educational video and the patients scan themselves. Again, under a research protocol, we're not released for that. But what we learned in that process is that people can learn very quickly how to do lung ultrasound.
Fascinating. And you've said before that there is a physician who is actually using this on himself who is infected, because it brings up a question that I have, is that it's effective in following progress of the disease. Is that correct?
Yes, and I think we've all learned that what we all worry about is the pneumonia, if you will, the lung changes that can go on to certainly ARDS in some people,
Right.
ventilator dependence, and they get really sick from it. And so people start off with some early findings, which actually Dr. Chen did as well. And what you want to do is see, does it progress? Do you get consolidation? Do you see progression of the lung involvement? And it's critically important whether you're in the hospital or we're monitoring people or looking at people outside of these tents to identify this, because these are the people that get into trouble that are going to need our valuable limited resources because they will ultimately need more significant support.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I mean that's the big question right now is do we have enough ventilators and the logistics of getting the people to the ventilators, and if we have the capability of following them on a daily basis, and of course you could never do that with CT, and if we have the ability to follow them on a daily basis and not waiting for their pulse ox to drop, as you said, being a relatively later finding, not late, but later finding than ultrasound changes, then I think that that actually helps us in the appropriate allocation of the limited resources in a mass scale. If we have just X number of events and we don't want we want to make sure that they get to the right people at the right time, we can start to see a trajectory both of worsening, but also see a trajectory for improvement, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, and I think you've hit it exactly right. So understanding what's coming and what's getting worse and what's getting better is incredibly helpful to actually predict how, from a logistical perspective, and I'm going to manage very limited resources. And one image in time doesn't tell you about the pattern of progression, whereas our doctors now is just on the phone with someone this morning from Italy, and what he basically does, he makes rounds in the hospital and every day imaging people once or even twice a day just to follow the progression. And they're able to identify those people that are getting into trouble and those people that actually are getting better and can be left alone, and therefore judge accordingly how much stress are we going to be putting on the system going forward. So really important tool. And I think what's very helpful and an important thing to think about in this time, we talk about this virus, we talk about the pandemic and understanding how to manage this. Maybe one of the silver linings here is the entire medical community is going to begin to appreciate how important lung ultrasound is. because once this is all said and done and over, the need for lung ultrasound isn't going to go away, and we're going to have
Right.
people a lot better trained. This isn't the last epidemic. Every year we have a flu season and pneumonias. Congestive heart failure is a huge problem throughout the world, and now we're going to accelerate the learning of physicians all across the planet who can really utilize this tool and it can take the place it really should be in medicine today.
And one of the things that you're talking about, or one of the things that we're not talking about yet, is in the real time that you're looking at the lung, you can switch over and you can actually look at the heart, because when one of the things that happens with ARDS and other lung pathologies is it starts to place stress on the heart and other organs, and ultrasound right there at the bedside is able to assess the entire system instead of and do it on a daily basis or twice a day or that kind of a basis, and really have a handle on how this patient is doing, the whole system, their lungs, their heart, and other systems. Whereas if we were doing that by CT, uh, they'd be lit up by the end of the week. Number one, but number two, there would be such a backlog of getting them into the scanner that it would be impossible. So this is an amazing movement toward better, closer daily monitoring of these patients and the whole patient, not just the lungs.
Yeah, it's such an important point because in the conversation I had with the physician, this is his routine. He goes in, he scans their lungs and to look to see progression. He looks at their heart because there's also reports coming out, and you've probably seen them, that some of the sickest patients get a dilated cardiomyopathy and get
Sure.
into real trouble. And so, quick assessment of the heart is part of what he does every day. The third test he does is he looks at the IVC collapsibility to try to make an assessment of volume status. Again, using the Butterfly as the same device, he could do all three. And then in those patients that get a little edema in his legs, he does a very quick test for DVT. So with a single device, one person going in the room can make a quick assessment of all of those systems and walk out the door, limiting exposure to other people, making much better decisions at the bedside with real-time information. It's really highlighting the versatility and power of this device in this particular circumstance, but will show lasting value once all this is over.
Yeah, I just had a podcast with two very bright people. One of the podcast guests was a defense contractor who deals with the government's interest in innovation for the Defense Department, obviously. The other was Director of Communications for a um, healthcare accelerator in New York, both of which were my sons. And I had an opportunity to be a proud dad and talk to some very bright guys about how this epidemic and pandemic is going to change how we practice medicine, even how we view it. And I don't think we've really come to appreciate. I mean, don't misunderstand my statement here. This is I'm not happy that we have people who are sick with COVID-19 virus, but there are going to be some very positive things come out of our efforts here. And I think that one of those is this spreading of what I call high touch, low technology, and which is Butterfly being one of those things, putting ultrasound into the hands of practitioners rather than concentrating it in single locations. And we're not going to get off talking about hyperfine and uh, MRI, portable MRI, but at some point I'm going to bring you back and we'll talk about hyperfine. But the whole concept of moving technology out into the hands of practitioners at the ground level is going to be something that is really going to be a tectonic shift in the way we practice medicine. So I find that an interesting idea that this kind of thing is going to end up being positive, not just in the individual patient, but as a professional cultural shift.
Yeah, no one likes to say that there's the silver lining when people are suffering and dying and
Yeah, yeah.
struggling. But the bottom line is our healthcare industry is going to be better after all this is over with. I don't think there's any question in my mind that that is the case. And, we've been talking for a year with Butterfly about how valuable it is to bring diagnostic imaging to the bedside. Two-thirds of diagnostic dilemmas, that when we don't know exactly what's wrong with somebody, can be solved with simple imaging. And you and I grew up in the era where you had to order a test. And
Yeah.
when we ordered a test, the patient's waiting, the doctor's waiting, everybody's waiting, and no worse place to wait than and candidly in the emergency room. We all feel it. Now, when you order a test, it's really about reaching into your pocket to wait for an answer. It's in your other hand. It's on your phone. And we have the ability to make instant decisions, and there's no time better than to start treatment than right away. Almost every condition you can certainly imagine is better served by rapid decisions and instituting therapy. And so Butterfly is going to be an intimate part of that whole decision. And you and I were trained in the era of stethoscopes. We the old school guys that maybe really know how to use it. But if we're honest with each other and with all physicians, we listen with a stethoscope and in many respects guess. They may be educated guesses, but they're guesses. So we listen and guess. Now you can look and know. And that's real definitive change with putting an ultrasound in the hands of every physician at the bedside.
Yeah. Yeah. The My son-in-law is an emergency physician, and he is an ultrasound aficionado. I mean, that these guys, the younger guys coming out of training right now, they they they're high on this technology because you're right. They're actually seeing things that in the past you and I were listening to, and so okay, that sounds like aortic stenosis. That sounds like a mid-systolic click associated with this or that, and they're actually looking at it, and so that's tremendous. And the other aspect, and I know we've said this on the podcast, but one of the things that's so important is to be able to reassess on a rapid basis how people are doing, whether they're getting worse or getting better. And when we have been machine-based, test-based, and not bedside evaluation based, we've only got a series of snapshots. It's almost like moving from snapshot to movie, and seeing how the patient is actually doing. And I, as you know, we can't overstate the importance and the benefit of looking at something in real time.
I think of so many clinical scenarios that we've all been involved in where the patient suddenly becoming hypotensive and not knowing why. A central line was put in a little bit ago. The portable chest x-ray isn't back yet to see if it's a
Right.
pneumothorax. Did somebody hurry up and get a chest x-ray in here? Now I take the device out and look and see if there's a pneumo, looking for lung sliding. I mean, the difference is, or they're hypotensive, you can look in their abdomen. Is there free fluid in there? Is it actually a AAA? There's so many applications that we can think of for having the instant ability to answer questions is such a powerful tool. We're going to be better doctors. There's just no question in my mind. There's another interesting point of this, and we're focusing a lot on the device, and I think the device is important. The other aspect is one of the other interesting things that goes with Butterfly is this secure cloud that we have, where we have the ability to share de-identified information with each other, with experts. Now we have people scanning with Butterfly. They've learned how to do ultrasound. They're pretty competent doing it, but are they really competent in interpreting what they're looking at? Through our cloud and instant sharing and this software, we can zip it to the expert, even if he's not on shift, and say, "Can you look at this and tell me, should I be worried about this or not?" And so we're not giving this a lot of attention at the moment because we want people to just start using the device. But at the end of the day, it's also that ability to share knowledge quickly through this application that makes Butterfly also incredibly special at this moment in time.
Yeah, exactly right. We have the difficulty, and I'm going to be honest with you, we have the difficulty with people saying, is this too much? Am I releasing too much information to the cloud? But I think that you've made an important point as de-identified information. And I think that we learn more, we provide better care when we are in consultation with experts. And I don't think that people need to be worried about the fact that my information is in the cloud.
Well, we've gone through great lengths, and I'm certainly not the expert to speak to it, to make sure that this is secure. SOC 2 certified, all the things that are HIPAA compliant. We've really kind of done everything possible. But at the end of the day, and we're sure it is, we have to share information with each other. We used to do it in the doctor's lounge. You know this.
Yeah.
we used to teach each other these things. And right now, particularly in this situation where we have to isolate each other, we need the ability to communicate and share knowledge. It is so important right now that we do that. And, it's why the president has loosened a lot of the stuff around HIPAA at the moment, because it is so important that we share information. And I think the public understands that. We certainly respect privacy, but we also respect the ability of getting us all up to speed and taking good care of people.
I've spent my 90% of my professional career working at night and alone. And I will tell you, and anybody who's done that, I'm sure you have, that is a very scary proposition because if I don't know it, there's not too many people that I can go to in the moment who can help me. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, and I do need help. And the idea that there are people out there that can just reassure me that I'm doing the right thing. Or yes, that looks like B lines. Or yes, that looks like a AAA. Or yes, uh, and in smaller settings and things that you need something right now. Well, I can't overstate the benefit of having uh, additional help at your fingertips.
I think this is really key. And part of what we're also trying to do on our website is share the images from experts from around the world so that there's a reference point so people can look at and say, okay, that's what I'm supposed to be seeing. Yep, that's it. As well as trying to put experts together with others that are not quite as expert. We all have the ability to scan, but if somebody in Italy has seen, 100 consecutive cases of COVID, there's no question that guy knows a little bit more than I do seeing 10. And we want
Yep.
to somehow make his information be transferred around the globe today. It's one of the true advantages, if you will, with information sharing that we have right now, is we're able to try to raise the level of the game for everybody. And patients will be better served for it everywhere.
Well, I know I certainly have learned a lot from our discussions today, John, and I hope that everyone hearing this, we pushed this up. I want to get this podcast out as quickly as I can because I think this really changes the way we think about it. The idea of real-time reanalysis and looking at patients' trajectories for improvement and also uh, when they're worsening. I think that the advantages of handheld ultrasound cannot be overstated. So I hope everybody that hears this will tell their friends and jump on EP Monthly to discuss this. If you have questions, John, what's the email that I don't want to inundate you, but I know that you can answer questions, and if people have interest in this technology, want to get it for their particular hospital, where should they go?
Yes, they can go to our website, butterflynetwork.com, and they can actually click on. We've created a very specific COVID-19 landing spot within our website. We're passionate about sharing information from the physicians we're communicating with all over the world. We're updating that every other day with new information that includes things like scanning protocols, images, all kinds of different information that will be helpful for people. Important references, links to key sites, and I think that's a great way for people to get information. There's a way to contact us on that website. That information will get to me, and so I would encourage people to go to butterflynetwork.com and look for that COVID-19 landing page.
And I think again, when we talk about changes in the way we practice, being this terrible pandemic, being actually having some positive sides to it, there's a great deal of money that's been injected into the response to this, and it may be that some of that's available to help equip hospitals and physicians. I don't know. I'm not saying that there is, but I would think that there's a possibility that we might be able to put handheld ultrasound in more people's hands as a result of this terrible pandemic. So I want to tell everyone that I appreciate you listening, and I hope that Emergency Physicians Monthly is a valuable publication to you, and EP Talk is something that is of value to you as well. So thank you for listening, and we hope to see you next time.